He's like the epitome of the reluctant hero.
Which is actually the most helpful thing, unfortunately. When we're in this situation, it's kind of like, oh, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
A little bit. Even though we're really scared, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool that this is happening right now.
Ooh, interesting.
I feel like Bert's never been, knocked down. Brian has.
So it's just this kind of clumsy, like, two Buster Keatons trying to mess each other up.
Well, we wanted a romance at the center of this. We wanted a real love story.
It was really complicated, and he told me so.
When we have those four people available to us, why would we have looked further?
Hi, Kevin and Lauren. My name is Chris, and I'm a host of a show called Once and Always a Fanboy in the Philippines. It's great to meet you both today.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Chris.
So this one first is for Kevin. One thing that stood out to me at the start of the series is that even at the end of the world, Stuart is still running the comic shop. Do you think the comic shop has always been Stuart's way of making sense of the world, even when the world stops making sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's his safe place, which is really the main premise of the spin-off, is that he has to leave his safe space. It's almost like a metaphor that even amidst the end of the world, there's that shelter of the comic book store. And then he's, has to take some kind of action. He's like the epitome of the reluctant hero.
This one's for Lauren. Stuart and Denise aren't the kind of people who usually see themselves as the main characters. Once they become the leads, especially with Denise, what was the first thing you realized about her that you hadn't fully appreciated before?
Yeah, I think she's really strong and she's really level-headed. I think, in the original series, you do see a little bit of her level-headedness. She's pretty cool and go with the flow and kind of logical. But in this series, we get to see much more of that put to the test, and so it's pretty fun. I enjoyed that about her.
The multiverse lets you change almost everything about your character's circumstances. Was there one thing about Stuart and Denise that you both felt absolutely couldn't change, no matter what universe they were in?
Yeah, I think that their mutual appreciation for each other, and also the foundation of the relationship is kind of their interests in comic books and their nerdiness together.
Mm-hmm. That's their as a couple, that's their touchstone. No matter what crazy world they're in or situation, they maintain this support that they actually in a way foreshadow in the original Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So Stuart and Denise know each other so well at this point. If the multiverse swapped one of you with an evil alternate version, who would figure it out first, and who would go the longest without realizing they were talking to the wrong person?
Oh, I feel like Denise would figure it out first, only because if it was an evil version, it would be quite different from you. And I feel like Denise has her moments where she's drinking or having different things happening where you might not at first just not think anything was wrong. You might just think she's in a bad mood.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they sort of hint throughout the season that Denise is maybe a notch superior intellectually than Stuart. So it'd probably be easier for her to pull one over on him.
What was it about Stuart, Denise, Bert, and Barry that made you guys personally think they were the right ones to tell this story, as opposed to, creating an entirely new group of characters?
Well, I think they all bring something different to the table. And with Stuart and Denise, their love of comic books helps actually inform so much of how they handle all the situations that come their way. And then having Bert as a geologist is helpful because he's able to help us get out of situations for those, or just kind of deduce what's going on. Which is actually the most helpful thing, unfortunately, and can save us in certain moments.
The Big Bang Theory was about people who loved stories of superheroes. Now that these people get to be versions of that, at what point did that stop feeling like a fun premise and start feeling emotionally true for all these characters?
I mean, I guess from the pilot episode, because the circumstances are so different. They're in this apocalyptic universe, and Stuart heads out into this, very dangerous world. So right there is, I mean, Stewart in the original series was just sort of fearful and anxious and would never do something like that unless he absolutely had to.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of part of what makes us excited about what's going on around us is that we like the comic book stories and everything. So like when we're in this situation, it's kind of like, oh, it's kind of fun. A
Yeah.
little bit, even though we're really scared, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool that this is happening right now.
Yeah, and actually, in the original Big Bang Theory, there is an episode in which Stuart and Denise are really the only ones in a much more grounded world that believe it was they have like a what it
Was
was
it a
like a
meteor? Was it
yeah like a meteor a meteorite.
We're just like,
And they were saying they were going to cut it open, and we were like, "Are you crazy?
Yeah.
You'll unlock a space virus or something like that." So we already were leaning in that direction. So it's been so fun to see those characters actually, have that reality realized.
yeah.
Very nice. So that's it for my time. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and congratulations on the show.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Brian and John. My name is Chris, and I'm a host of a show called Once and Always a Fanboy here in the Philippines. It's great to meet you both today.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
So this one first is for Brian. One thing I love about Bert is that he never seems to lose his sense of optimism, even when everything around him is falling apart. In a story full of chaos and uncertainty, why do you think he never loses that part of himself?
I don't think he ever looked at anything. I think that's been his whole thing, his whole life. I just feel like if he was bullied, he didn't care. He went home and had a good day, and his mom cooked him soup and made it all better. But I feel like Bert's never been, knocked down. Brian has. So it's acting. It's acting for Brian to be optimistic.
This one's for John. For years, Barry was largely defined by his rivalry with Sheldon. This series finally gives him a story that's his own. What did that allow you to discover about him that you never had the chance to explore before?
It's an interesting challenge to dimensionalize this character who was just, an all-purpose pain in the ass, and to give him some clearer wants and needs and force him to work well with others, which has never been his strong suit. So that was really fun. I was really grateful for the opportunity.
This series doesn't suddenly turn Bert and Barry into action heroes. They still solve problems like Bert and Barry. Why was it important that the adventure adapted to them instead of the other way around?
You make a really good point that they're action heroes by their own limited standards.
Right.
And that was fun for the stunt department, actually, because the stunt department would help us choreograph fights, but it was very much people who didn't know how to fighting.
Well, we even have that first episode.
Yeah.
Stuart gets to deliver it, but that joke of, well, I'm new to the action genre. We all are. So.
Yeah. So that moment of like when we are trying to kick each other's ass, it was really fun because we never get to do anything like that. And the stunt department is always used to working with people who can actually mess you up. Yeah. So it's just this kind of clumsy, like two Buster Keatons trying to mess each other up. It was fun to play.
So Bert and Barry have very different strengths. If the two of them had to switch personalities for a day, who do you think would struggle more and who would secretly enjoy it?
Ooh, interesting.
Haha.
It would be fun to be tall.
Yeah.
The personalities, though, you said. Okay, yeah, not
fun
like full free.
Bert would enjoy probably having no censor.
Yeah,
because he clearly doesn't.
Yeah, and I think Kripke would enjoy the optimism of Bert. I think they would get a lot out of each other.
What was it about Stuart, Denise, Bert, and Barry that made you guys personally think they were the right ones to tell this story, as opposed to a new set of characters to go through this journey?
If you introduce new characters, the audience might not have gone for that, but when you have us, and also putting it in the comic book store was so smart.
Yeah.
To have this thing that was already, you instantly identify it as a Big Bang set. You go, oh, that's Stuart's place. The second you see it. And I think to have that grounded it And then once you had that and Stuart, it made sense. Even though Bert never went in the comic shop on the old show.
Yeah, neither
but to
did
me,
Kripke.
like the first time, because I am a comic book guy, like literally I write them too, but I also go to the store every Wednesday. I'm that kind of nerd. To have that fit, and at least felt as an actor, it felt like a good fit.
Yeah.
So that's it for my time. Thank you guys for sharing your stories and congratulations on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks, man. Nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Hi, Chuck, Bill, and Zach. My name is Chris, and I'm a host of a show called Once and Always a Fanboy in the Philippines. Great to meet you three today.
Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So this one first is for Chuck. For so much of the Big Bang Theory, things happen to Stuart. Here, he's suddenly the one driving the story forward. Why did he feel like the right character to carry that kind of responsibility?
Because he's the absolute wrong character, the worst possible choice to wear the hero's role. I've always been an enormous fan of Kevin Sussman, and his comedy abilities are extraordinary. So the combination of the character of Stuart being incompetent, a loser, but a sweethearted, a good-hearted, schlep, and Kevin's talent was the reason for the choice.
So this one's for Bill. The Big Bang Theory was about people who loved stories of superheroes. Now these people get to be versions of that. At what point did that stop feeling like a fun premise and start feeling emotionally true for these characters?
The characters find themselves in this situation by virtue of the premise of the series that they're moving from universe to universe. And I think I don't think the feeling about it ever changed. These characters have stayed true to who they are and just have to deal with the universe they're in, whether it's a universe where you can encounter superheroes or a universe where you chew your cud.
There's a bit of an arc that like Stuart goes through of gradually accepting his mantle by the end, so.
That's true. He does have the growth from a reluctant hero to finally agreeing to sort of do it.
For Zach, even with alternate realities and dystopian futures, the humor still comes from these characters being themselves. Was there ever a version of this story that leaned too far into the sci-fi before you found the right balance?
Yes, there was. The first time Chuck pitched it to me, I think I pitched him back something that was like a sprawling sci-fi. It was really complicated, and he told me so, and said, no, let's keep going. At first blush, it was kind of overcomplicated. Then it got simplified, and then we made it overcomplicated in the making of the show.
What was it about Stuart, Denise, Bert, and Barry in particular that made you think they were the right ones to tell this story, as opposed to creating an entirely new show or a group of characters?
Well, we wanted a romance at the center of this. We wanted a real love story at the center of this. It gave us rooting for, hoping that Stuart finds happiness is one of the subliminal elements of this thing, because he's deeply, deeply in love with her. Barry Kripke was, I think it was Bill's beautiful idea to be a character who is so objectionable and annoying and self-aggrandizing and just a horrible human being. And I love that. That made me very happy. And what can you say about Brian Posehn? He's this great comic actor, a voice like an oboe, I guess, maybe?
Bassoon.
Yeah.
And just a very specific style of comedy. He goes under the jokes. He is a very, very sophisticated comic actor. It was a beautiful ensemble.
Lauren is one of this generation's great improv performers.
Yes.
Comic actors. Right. When we have those four people available to us, why would we have looked further?
Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.